The Iditarod sled dog race is a race in Alaska. It starts in Anchorage and it goes all the way to Nome. It's a 1,150-mile sled dog race. It started on Saturday, March 5th, and it will end when the first teams arrive in Nome, Alaska. My name is Todd Hausman, and I'm a fourth grade teacher in Bellingham, Washington. My students have been studying the Iditarod, and we've also been studying elapsed time. When mathematicians talk about elapsed time, what are we talking about? What are people doing? Kalia?
Are we going to use the Iditarod?
Elapsed time is actually a really tricky concept for a lot of students, and the Iditarod is a great opportunity for them to use real authentic data to explore elapsed time. But the really nice thing about the Iditarod is it really appeals to students, both because they enjoy watching the dogs and the stories of the actual competitors themselves are just remarkably compelling.
At 9 o'clock this morning, I checked, and Martin Boozer was first. Yeah. Lance Mackey was second.
I'm surprised that Dallas CV isn't in fourth place or sixth place.
I checked right before I went to school, and he's still at Takatna, resting his team. He has 12 dogs.
Today what the students are going to be doing is they're going to be going on to the Iditarod website. They're going to be looking at where their mushers are this morning, and then they're going to be making some predictions about where their mushers are going to be or what time their mushers are going to arrive in the checkpoint of Iditarod. So it's actually a fairly complex task, because what students have to do is they have to look at the mile marker that the mushers are at today. They have to think about the mile marker that the mushers are going to be at in the near future, and they have to estimate how long it's going to take the musher to go from point A to point B. I'm going to stick with Martin, okay? And let's use Martin Boozer as an example. So Martin Boozer arrived at the Takatna checkpoint 8:16 p.m. All right, now let's think about that. One thing we could do is we could measure how much time has passed since he's been at the checkpoint. Ethan, you have a question?
We'll need to add 24 hours onto our prediction, because the mushers are going to take their 24-hour break somewhere before the town of Iditarod.
So let's talk about that. That's really important. I think we can assume, based on what we know about our musher, that this is his 24-hour rest break. Okay? So if he came in at 8:16 p.m. last night, that means he has to wait until 8:16 p.m. tonight on 3/9 before he can leave. You're familiar with this page. This is the live GPS tracking page. So Martin's at mile 307 right now, okay? And then the Iditarod checkpoint, Tim, is I think this one where the trail breaker is right there. We can see that the goal is to get to mile 405. How many miles does he have to travel between Takatna and Iditarod? What's the difference between those two numbers there? What did you get, Shoshana?
98.
98, okay. So we know Martin has 98 miles to go before he gets to the town of Iditarod. If he gets there first, he gets $3,000 in gold nuggets, right? So now what do? How are we going to figure out our estimate? We know what time he's going to leave, or what time we think he's going to leave. We know how many miles he has to travel. So how are we going to deal with coming up with a reasonable estimate, Sarah?
Well, this is how fast he's going.
So how fast would you estimate?
9 to 10.
Okay, 10's a nice easy number. Cole, what does that tell us?
9 hours and 8/10.
Okay, Jacob, what would you do with 9 and 8/10?
1/5 of 60 is 12, and 12 times 4 is 48.
Right, so you would actually be able to say that's 9 hours and 48 minutes. So we can say that Martin will arrive in Iditarod at 6:16 a.m. Now, either you or your partner, and if you're not sure, do rock, paper, scissors quickly, but one of you needs to get a laptop computer and open up the Iditarod.com site so you can... What will happen is students will break up into pairs, and that's partly because we have a limited number of laptop computers, so it's a logistical decision, but it's also a decision that really helps students, because having a partner gives them somebody that they can work with, somebody they can talk to, somebody that they can throw ideas off of, and then they can work together to kind of, come up with some strategies that will be effective for them. And they're going to be using a couple of different websites. They're going to be using the Iditarod.com website, which has the real live GPS data on it. And they'll also be using a wiki site that I've created for the students where they can then post their predictions online. That's a nice accountability piece for me. It allows me to then go back later and look at the predictions they made. And it also gives them an opportunity to go back and compare their predictions once the mushers have arrived at their final destination.
So we guessed that Sebastian Schneele was going to take his 24-hour rest at Chakotna, so we just did the same time the next day. And then we figured out what mile marker he was at, and then figured out what mile marker Iditarod was at, and found the difference, which was 98.
Then we did 98
And then we did 98 divided by 9, which we thought 9 was his average speed. So we got 10.8, and then we did it was that not 8.97 hour was 53 minutes. So it would take him 10 hours and 53 minutes to get to Iditarod. And so we added that on to the time that he left. And we got 20.68, and then we converted that to the actual military time, which was 21.8. And then we guessed he would
March
arrive.
9th, because he left yesterday.
Yeah.
March 9th.
Sebastian Schneele will arrive in Iditarod at 21:08 on the date 3/10/11.
You know, one of the things about math is a way for people to try to make sense of the natural world, and I think that's how math was developed, and that's why people continue to really rely on math. The wonderful thing about this race is we don't know. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, and there's no way that any of us can prove whether or not the predictions are accurate. The goal isn't, to get the right answer. The goal is to use the mathematical skills that they have to be able to come up with a prediction that's reasonable and that they can defend logically. So it really is a wonderful experience for them to have, and the best part is, they get to develop it and explore it on their own.